what's your topic area and report out what you'd like.
So we had financing tools and programs, and even before we had the ones they gave us, but then we kind of went on and just added some more, and that's where our discussion kind of stemmed from. So we have low-income housing tax credit, housing choice vouchers, tax incremental financial or TIF, community revitalization tax relief incentive, and then we added tools and programs that town-owned property. So where the town, which is currently making $0 on a piece of land, can donate it and then build and then get tax revenue from that. Talking about land trust. What was the example of that?
I was talking about land trust in California.
In California, there, I guess, was a group of people who got together to purchase.
Essentially, this is something I read about. It was something I read about a community where there was a number of properties that had been foreclosed. A number of properties in Northern California had been foreclosed. They were squatted by people in the community. They occupied them unlawfully. The bank evicted them and then realised the cost of fencing them off and patrolling them with security guards were far more expensive than just donating the properties back to the community. And they set up a land trust. I don't know what there is of that in New Hampshire. But essentially, it's a way of maintaining the property within the community. It doesn't go back out into sort of the general housing stock, so it's not lost, so it can be used for low-income housing.
And so yeah, we talked about kind of getting into the benefits of these, and the one we talked deeply about was the housing choice vouchers, and kind of the idea of, there's a stigma on it, so like changing public perception, getting success stories from like mass data, and thinking about, can developers offer a percentage of their units for acceptance of vouchers, and then we talked about public-private partnerships as it pertains to TIFs.
That's great. Did you?
What was the last thing? Oh, this was another program, the Southwestern Community Services.
To manage this.
To manage, yeah.
Are they here today? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. Can I ask this group, based on your discussion, is there one other particular topic you would like to, you would be interested in jumping into next because it would inform it, or maybe you didn't get that far? Okay, that's fine.
Maybe regulation and policy, I guess?
Maybe regulation and policy. That might make sense. Would you like to go next? Regulation and policy?
We could do that because it dovetails. Our first item there is local control. And local control kind of dovetails a bit with where you ended, which is somewhere there's a RSA, a relevant RSA, a piece of legislation, a piece of law that we'd be able to use as a tool to accomplish some of these things. Housing trust. Being a home rule state, we can only do what the state.
We're not a home rule state.
A non-home rule state. We can only do what the state allows us to do. But somewhere in all of these reams of paper, there is a piece of legislation that's going to allow us to do what we need to do, what we feel we need to do. It's a matter of finding.
We want to see that. We want to see what it says. Yeah.
What
We
are
have
the
no idea.
statutes? We don't know. What, just to clarify, so the statutes on local control?
It says, towns and cities may regulate only what the state legislature empowers them to regulate. There should be a list of what those powers are.
Yeah, and I can at least say in terms of land use regulations, it's RSA 674, and it goes all the way down. So you'll find 674.21, which is innovative land use techniques.
674.
And then there's 674, RSA 674.
674.
It's on page 7. The reference is on page 7.
And there may be
Oh, okay.
another
All right.
reference to how the state grants powers to the town. It's beyond just the planning and zoning part, but I don't know the answer to
Right,
that.
okay.
I feel like it's, yeah.
I think she would know more than anybody in the room, probably.
All right, well, we just want to put that on our list of things we want.
All right, so I'd encourage you to make sure it's on the sheet, because we can bring more information back, so thank you. But why don't you go ahead with your report, Artie?
Then we go to Federal Fair Housing Act. We had a bit of discussion. Somehow when we start talking affordable housing, we talk about families, young families, and children moving in, and cost of schools and that. So our discussion centered around pro-family and versus the cost of services to children. Workforce housing law, our feeling was that much of the data that this body of law was based upon is out of date and is not really usable anymore. Accessory dwelling unit, we discussed what we have in Peterborough and that an ADU is allowed and owner occupied, and we're wondering if it allows for detached units or if the unit needs to be attached.
It does.
It does allow
Yes.
detached, okay, so that answers that question.
And it probably ought to allow two, but doesn't.
What did you say?
Okay.
Megan?
I said that it would, many jurisdictions have allowed both an attached and a detached ADU on a single lot with a primary house.
But we don't do that?
We do not, because I failed.
We don't yet. We don't yet.
Try
So-
again.
We don't yet.
Could I say one more
If we're
thing?
getting back to land use regulations in the state, that's allowable right now. You can do that. And the state
Okay.
in 2017 had put forth a law of attached ADUs, but it was always allowed, so that was sort of a mandate. And the reason is towns are not really interested in attached or detached necessarily. And so you could do that now, and you can regulate everything that goes with that. How big, does it need to have parking, things like that.
One other piece of information that we put down under the workforce housing law is that technically Peterborough does meet the letter of the law in terms of offering rental, affordable or whatever, but it's not enough still. Even though we do meet that, it's not enough.
And I wanted to
So-
follow up, I was just curious what you thought was out of date about it, because I know there
data.
is some religion. What data do you mean though?
The whole thing we discussed with the affordability and that 30% threshold of
Yeah.
income just not being reality anymore. 2008,
Yeah.
you know.
So the thing I will say about the workforce housing law and the genesis of it was based on exclusionary practices of the town. And so what I'd love is to make the workforce housing law obsolete. But I think it gets down to people who were questioning what's affordable, and so it looked at area median income to get to a point where you sort of look at it and say, in our new buildings, it's the new units that come online for rent and purchase, do they meet that median? And sometimes that median was really high. I think that's the difference. Sometimes we say we're meeting it. What I always say is I talk about the workforce housing law as a guide. I don't think it's about, I guess we can question the 30%, but the whole point of it was to create reasonable and realistic opportunities for affordable housing and workforce. You have the opportunity to define all of that is. This is just sort of a maximum standard. So it's a place where you can delve in and say, you know what, our workforce housing law here is going to be, we want it to be affordable 20% of someone's income at 50% of the AMI. Nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Okay, great. One more thing to add about the accessory dwelling unit, and we brought, maybe I brought it up. Did Peterborough make the mistake of voting to have an owner occupied as opposed to non-owner occupied? So maybe we need to rehash that.
I would add that if you go to accessorydwellings.org and the ADU guru,
Oh,
Cole Peterson, he only had data for where he lived, but he saw that, you pulled out the stops for the barriers to creating accessory dwelling units, and it wasn't until they got rid of all sorts of dimensional parking and the owner-occupied piece that it started to happen more. You had to have owner-occupied. I know, especially in communities where hospitality and second homes and vacation homes are an issue, that becomes a problem. But it is a good point, and it's worthy to consider. I think that's where I go back and say, what benefits us, and are we willing to take some risk or not? Don't have the answer to that, but.
I'd just like to mention that we've allowed ADUs in Peterborough for a long time. But when I first got here, there weren't any being done. It hasn't been till the last, say, 2 years or so that we're getting a lot of building permits to add ADUs. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but there's quite a few that have been built in the last 2 or 3 years. We can get those numbers.
Who's next, Mona?
Do you want to jump on the ADU? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
So our group is the types of housing, and I'll pick up from the ADU conversation. There was a couple of things, and this really does just pony right on that we'd like accessory dwelling units to be by right, versus by having to go through boards.
And they are.
As they are. Is it by right?
It's by right.
Is it by right?
We've been progressive, believe it or not.
Okay, so it's by right. But the problem is the 750 square feet piece. That's a bit prohibitive, right? That's the largest it can be?
No.
Minimum. That's minimum. That's a minimum. What's
It's the max.
The minimum the state allows is 750 square feet.
No.
Okay.
that's the max.
Or 1/3. I'm sorry, the maximum, no, yes. Our Peterborough's maximum is the minimum.
750.
Ah,
Or
Okay.
30% of your.
Total
But I'm just saying.
At least with the state law, the attached, you can't make it be any less than 750 square feet. That's the bottom line of the law. You can make it more or have a range. So whatever you're doing, you can't. So some places have said, okay, the max is 750 because the state's minimum entry is 750 for attached.
and that's what we did?
But you have a lot of room to do whatever you want.
30%.
Or 30%, whichever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bit confusing. The state requires that each town allow at least 750 square feet. A landowner could do as low as 400 square feet. However, Peterborough went beyond that and said it's the greater of 750 square feet or 30% of the gross living space of the primary dwelling. So if you have a larger house, you can have a larger ADU. Now, what that translates into, I can't remember, it's over 2,000 square feet before that 30% kicks in. And so if you raise the 750 to 800 or 850 as the lower than that would be there would be a benefit.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that
Thank you.
that this group obviously needs more discussion on ADUs.
Right.
Because I'm watching the time.
Yeah, thank you. So we also noticed that condos and condexes are not on this list. Is that by design?
That's part of multifamily.
Nah, it isn't though. It's not by the definition. It's just not here. And we do have condos. If I remember. Okay. So and that's all I'm going to say about it because we got a time thing. That's a good point. So, okay.
Can we, go ahead.
We did the end there a little bit, I'll be fast, but under inclusionary zoning, I think a lot of our conversation is that it's important to understand what opportunities there are from our town in this, because the idea of inclusionary zoning on its face seems very appealing, and it's just a matter of understanding what the best benefits that we can offer, what would be most effective for our town, and what would it look like? I think that's our question. What kind of opportunities are out there? What can we select that really works for our town? So there's just learning more about inclusionary zoning can be very important. Instead of just talking briefly about density and land development, and just a general understanding, land is very expensive around here. If you buy a lot and you can only put one house on it, then by default you're going to have an expensive house, and that's pretty much all you can do. So to some extent, we have to allow density development if we're ever going to get the affordable housing we need. And that's the most important stuff. I'll let people keep going.
Just real quick, it's important for everybody to know that you're allowed to do a duplex in every one of our residential districts, including the rural district. We haven't received building permits for duplexes. I don't think I've seen one since I've been here.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that only single family, but just making the point that the more units you have on a lot,
you know, it brings down the cost of land per unit and makes it more possible to have affordable. Thanks.
So are you proposing inclusionary zoning?
Well, I think, if you ask me personally, yes.
I think our group likes the idea, but it's like, what does it do?
Well, it doesn't, wait, folks, so we're just here learning and talking about these terms, and we're not at solutions, so I'd ask to table that. Yeah, sure. Because we're not at solutions right now, we're just learning and sharing these concepts and ideas, and what I'm hearing is there needs to be a lot more work around understanding all of these complex issues. So, hate to shut you guys down, but you'll get back to that at some point. I'm gonna let this final group categories for housing go ahead.
Hi there. Market rate housing, we kind of talked about that earlier. Generally, so affordable housing, so we were talking about, really for the people that aren't qualifying for subsidized housing up to that income level, probably about 45,000 a year, like what really is available that becomes affordable for them? You know, what really is available in our community at 30% of their income, and we're feeling like it's not very much. And then mixed income housing. We talked about Southfield being an example of that, and do people know? So Southfield has condos and then has a big multifamily behind. You know, big.
Are they part of the same development though?
They were originally, when it was originally conceived, it was all part of the same development, and then it phased out.
Do people know physically where Southfield is?
Yes, but isn't it expensive?
Past condo.
It's expensive to buy there though, right? I mean, across the
259.
So that's not for the people who want
Yeah,
this to
but there
happen.
is that multifamily there that's rentals.
Okay.
So it's, you know, same piece of land with that mixed use.
But they're not connected, Nicole?
They're both off of Southfield Road. You go up from Route 202, the road splits. If you go off to the left, you go to the multifamilies. If you go up to the right of the hill, that's where the condos are. And those have been phase developed over many years.
And 10 units have just been completed, another 20 units are going to be started this spring, condo units.
My question is, are the new units mixed income, or is it just because the
No,
old
we
units are
don't know.
Yeah,
grandfathered in?
we don't know that.
They're market rate.
Their market.
The new condo units being built are all market rate,
No, so they're at least
Yeah.
over like
259.
It started out that way. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So then, subsidized housing, we were talking about the waiting list and the lack of vouchers, availability. I know a family member of mine just got told that there was an 8-year waiting list. They wanted to live in Hillsborough County. So, you know, what's someone supposed to do for 8 years? They make $30,000 a year. Like, really, what are they supposed to do for 8 years? It's a little bit crazy. And then we were talking about the workforce housing and like, who decides what the workforce is and how much is our workforce making? So, you know, if you take, you know, New Hampshire Barbarian, for example, they're gonna have 10% of their top income earners are gonna skew the people that are making $15 an hour. You know, if they do an average, they're gonna skew it. So even though they have 800, or I don't know how many employees they have, but say they have 800 people making $15 an hour, then they have a whole bunch of people who make $200,000, you know, because they're fancy engineers and managers and all that. So that skews. So who's making sure that those 800 people that make $15 an hour, what's their workforce housing? You know, what do they need? Because the numbers using median is not friendly to the people who are in that mass.
Well, that looks like that was the number, $15 an hour times 40 times 52 is 31K. That translates to annual salary for somebody that's paying $836 a month, that's 30K. That's about that number. So that's what most people can afford is $836 with utilities.
Right.
I don't know of any apartments in Peterborough that go for under $1,000.
That's pre-tax too.
Right.
I get that, but that's the standard calculation. I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Taxes do get taken out, but if we're talking about, you know, what are the averages, so we need to be able to house people that can only afford $836 a month with utilities. How do we do that?
I think what you find is that there's a lot of people who are sharing. So there are people who get roommates, they get
Right.
housemates. I mean, that is, or they have a partner.
Right.
And they're both covering. That's essentially how
So,
it's happening.
and I don't want to add too much to this because I think this brings up the challenge of terminology. And you're right, the state's workforce housing law, like I said, was put into place because there needed to be some line in the sand that says, don't think this is affordable when it's 500,000 or whatever. So let's find some number that people can use as a test, meaning municipalities. And then the term itself was that when we talked about affordable housing, people thought it was for people that made no money, didn't work. And I don't mean like me. It was just like, how do we talk about this without having two sentences to explain it? But you've all just done a great job of trying to do it. And as much as that calculation is important, it's much deeper and broader. And who has the opportunity to solve that is community by community. And it's hard to know, like, what's Villaport going to do in their income range and be able to get that. But then I go back to the more simpler thing. It's like, how are we allowing that can be built, economically viably be built by a developer that meets a range of needs of different incomes, no matter how you do that? And that, in the end, is the real work and the real opportunity beyond terminology.
Because, George, what you're saying is that if we're able to provide that range of housing, then there can be mobility, right? Then there can be people moving one level to another and back down. And we're stopped because we just don't have that now. And so our challenge will be to formulate policy in a way that allows for that mobility and those options. And I just would say to the group, the tendency for us will want to be go to the how. How do we do it? How do we do it? I'm going to caution us to stay in the learning, in the why, right? We need to be very deeply immersed in the why and the what we're working in, and that's our work right now. We will get to the how, or the recommendations for the how, perhaps. So, Peter.
Well, one of our groups, our group could have really benefited from clear definitions of these categories.
Yeah.
Because you get all kinds of emotional baggage and confusion, and what it means to Peterborough in those categories should come out pretty soon in this group, because we spend a lot of time and energy talking about different things amongst yourselves, because we don't clearly identify what those terminology means. I don't know how.
Well, just one more time. Right, there's an opportunity to do that. And part of the reason we set this up today was to see how it worked in this fashion, and I actually like the idea of the group deciding, do you do more of this, group by group, or do you take one topic at a time altogether? What resource people do you need in the room as you talk through the topics? Not going to solve any of that today. As I said, this is an introduction. I hope it was helpful. I sense maybe it was frustrating, but if it is, that's okay. You've got to get through that. Right.
So the next step in this process is for us to go back to the circle, and we have about 15 minutes to wrap up. So just let's head over there. We want to